y'all know I grew up in the South, and I spent a lot of time in Memphis, and we bought a old farmhouse on the outskirts of Memphis, and I decided to open a coffee shop in that little town. And let me tell you, this might be a few-parter, I don't know. So the town where we moved to is about 800 people, and of that, the population was 85% black. I never thought it was an issue. In fact, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed living in a town like that. So I decided I was going to open a coffee shop on the little town square. And it was right next to a black barber shop. And across the street, there was a tattoo shop that was also a black shop. So I opened my coffee shop, and the first thing I did when coming into that neighborhood was I went to all the shops around me, and I brought them cookies and cinnamon rolls and things I was going to be baking at my... I know, it's funny.
Hi guys, welcome back to our channel. In case you're new here, my name is Maren.
And I'm Maureen.
Right, so in today's episode, you're going to be featuring a palm-colored woman who's a ginger, right? Who will be coming out to talk about her experience living in a predominantly black community, but that was still in the hands of a few white leaders, right? And she was gonna be talking about her experience defending black people, which led to her being castigated by her own community to the point where her life was even threatened.
Right.
Guys, remember this was just this month, there was a trend on TikTok that went viral about gingers being accepted into the black community, and this saw a lot of testimonies from the redhead
Ginger community.
Right, who are coming out to speak about many experiences of theirs being bullied and being treated like outcasts because they seemed different from the white community. And in this episode, she's going to be explaining how she was labeled a race traitor and how her life was in danger and her family and her child were in danger. Right, guys, let's watch what we have prepared for you and then we come back and talk about it. Her TikTok handle is on the screen for those ones who want to go follow her page, right?
Right.
Let's watch and then we come back and talk about it. Remember to subscribe if it's your first time here. Also, let us know what you think about the episode. Let's watch.
So I remember going to the barbershop for the first time, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I said, hey, y'all, I had been in California for 20 years, 30 years at this time. So I came back, I'm like, I'm from California. I'm opening this coffee shop here. Here are some of my baked goods. And we became friends, really good friends, to where I was hosting, like NAACP book signings in my coffee shop. My staff was entirely mixed. There was every person there that worked. It was always the white people who came into my business and asked me, is this a white or a black business? Now, having lived in California for 20 years and having not spent so much time in that part of the South, I didn't understand. So I didn't understand that they were labeling me because I was friendly to the black businesses. I ended up with a brick through my window. I ended up being threatened with a cross burning on my lawn. I had a cop threaten to shoot me because I was a race traitor. They even called me a carpet bagger. So anyways, the business did not work out financially, feasibly. The community was not supporting it. So years go by, I closed the coffee shop, and there is a racist incident at my daughter's school. These boys were threatening over group chat to lynch a black boy because he was dating a little white girl. So at their school, their principal made the white boys write a 10-page essay because they were baseball players and they were from a good family. So it sparked a sit-in. It sparked a protest. Now, when my daughter called me and said, Mom, we're going to participate in the sit-in, I rushed down there with pizzas and food and water and was ready to sit there and make sure these kids had what they need. Now, tell me, y'all, when I got there, why was I the only white mom there? I was the only white person. Me and my daughter were the only white people there. I've never been so embarrassed, and I actually got on the news. I opened my big mouth and yelled about how ashamed I was that I was the only white person there and that all parents should be coming out for this. The white community did not like that. That's when I got the threaten the cross burning on my lawn. But after that protest, after we had been supporting the kids and talking on the news and talking to BuzzFeed and talking all this stuff, there was a gathering at the black church after the protest. Now, by this time my husband had come down because I told him, like, hey, you know, we need more white people here. And there was another white friend of mine who actually, she was there from the beginning, Hayden. So anyways, everyone walks over to the black church. And as we're walking into the black church, a big man stepped up to bar the entrance of my husband and I because we're white. And Mookie, my friend from the barbershop, came out and said, nah, they one of us. And so we came in and we heard the plans and we were helping implement the plans as far where to go from here. Now, you'll notice one of my pinned posts is my daughter standing up for the kids and asking the tough questions. So what came out of this, the principal was fired, although he was moved to the county over and rehired. The superintendent, the one who sounds like Mr. Garrison in South Park in that clip, nothing ever happened to him. The boys eventually did get suspended, but they were allowed to play on baseball. So, not a lot happened. But what happened was I saw who the community really was and who is holding the community up. This county is a majority black county. The city is a majority black city. And at the time, it was still run by a few white people. When I left, a black mayor had taken over, and there were more black people involved in the business side of that small town. But what I know is that once Mookie opened that door and said, nah, they one of us, I knew I was. And so this movement doesn't surprise me as much as it surprises other black people, just because where I come from, where my family from, who was my family in that town as a carpetbagger who came from California, who was not accepted by the white people because I was not from there. The black community accepted me. All my tattoos are done by a black artist. And I don't know what my point to this is, just that I wanted to talk about it. It's hard to talk about in white circles because they look at me like I'm crazy.
So guys, welcome back. Let us know what you think about the video we just played. You know, one thing all these people normally have in common, and I mean the palm-colored people who speak against racism and defend black people, they're all normally labeled race traitors and lovers, you know. And one thing what she was describing in her situation, the fact that she used to find the kind of stress she used to find outside her home, you know. And the saddest thing is that it was her own people who are doing this to her. You know, sometimes I usually just sit down and wonder why white people have so much hate towards other groups of people, but in particular, black people, to be more specific, right? And I just wonder, is it so difficult for a group of white people, the ones who consider themselves supremacists or racist, is it so hard for them to find humanity? And if so, would they even ever find their humanity? Not if they still believe that they're better than every other person, especially black people. I do feel like in every conflicting situation, I feel like there's always that one party who's the aggressor, that if they decide to calm down or if they decide to let go of their bigotry and their, you know, their misguided ways, I feel like the peace would reign and people would get along far much better. But this, I don't think is ever going to happen, provided there are still systems in places that validate their feelings that they're better than any other group. Therefore, they are special, you know. Right, because white people, you find that they consider themselves to be the most religious people who follow the Bible to the letter, and they even take it a step further to volunteer and come to Africa to teach as missionaries to teach about the Bible, right? And I don't usually see many Africans going abroad to teach about the Bible. That is very interesting to me, because they're the ones who've accorded themselves the responsibility of going out into the world and spreading the word of God and the identity of God and how God is love and how you should love thy neighbor, because when you look at one another, you see God in yourselves, Yet they're the very same people who do not apply, because, even the same Bible they used to teach black people and other people across the world advises them to be humble, to be servants of God, yet
to love thy neighbor.
to love thy neighbor, yet they will look at a black person, they will look at a black baby and consider them less than themselves.
Right,
even go to and discriminate them, and some religions even go to a point further to describe how black people are not humans and that they are a product of the devil himself.
Right, and guys, whatever experience she talked about, I feel like we've had this before. There are white people, there are white activists who've come forward to defend the black community, people like Tim Wise and Jen Elliott. And I remember there's an interview I was watching of Jen Elliott where she was speaking about the same issue, where she said people from her own community, because she took the initiative to go and tell her people what they were doing to the black community was not right, and she would even she would turn the mirror to them and ask them if they would like to be treated the way they treat the black community, and none of them were happy. Some of them didn't want to be treated the way they treat black people, and she said whenever she'd go back home, it reached a point where she was really worried for her security and her safety, because she was really being treated like an outcast for speaking up against injustices, and as I said, it takes that one party that always likes to
breed hate and breed a lot of conflict in the community to decide that they just want peace and choose peace and love and humility for the sake of peace to reign, And another thing that this lady mentioned was that when she opened a business in that area where she went to live, she used to get shoppers of all kinds, but the majority white people would always make it a point to ask if that business was owned by a white person or a black person, which leads me to still believe what Americans usually say is true, that white America is the one that propels the racism card in America. They're the ones who keeps it alive and keep it going.
And you know what gets me is that town was majority black town, 85% of the population being black, but still somehow they still found a way to still like act against the black community, and I'm telling myself, okay, these systems, I feel like it's such statements or such stories that help those people who normally like saying there's no racism in America. It's stories like this that make you think there are those people who are more than happy to still keep those systemic racism, those white supremacy systems in place by, continuing to do what their forefathers did. Because why in the world would you just like treat somebody differently just because they have a different color of skin from yours? And the consequences of being racist, I feel like it lies more so on the black community than the white community, because as the woman was describing, it would seem like, or it would appear that the lives of those people who are involved, the palm-colored people, nothing much happened to them. In fact, their life just moved on. But the situation of that child who was bullied by another kid in school who happened to be white and was discriminated, that's an experience that child is gonna have to live with until they grow up. It's gonna shape who they are because it's gonna affect them,
Yeah, because what's even sad is that in the town where she was living, in order for that little justice to be served,
it wasn't
they
even
had
justice.
they had to protest, and it even had to make national news in order for some very small consequence to be done.
Anyway, guys, let us know what you think about this episode. We'd like to hear from you. At the end of the day, I feel like, the consequences I know for racist people is very little because they own everything, the whole system, even the police, because we've heard of cases where a black person went through a racist experience and went to report it to the police station, but they can't act against their own. They're united in that front at least.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, the cops, they all think the same way the racist civilians think.
Anyway, guys, let's catch you on our next episode. We are very thankful that you made time to watch
watch our episode. And also consider subscribing if it's your first time here. Don't leave without subscribing, yeah?